Okay, so now in this video we're going to go in and make some modifications to our leg assembly before taking it into our final main assembly. The first thing we're going to do is modify our materials. So if you remember, we changed everything else in our main assembly to ABS. So we're going to do the same here. And I'm going to change our physical material. I'm going to choose ABS and I'm going to drag it onto all of our parts. You can also drag it onto parts in your browser if that's easier. If you can't find them, they're hidden in places. So just be aware you can do it either way. Now that it's all ABS, the other thing I want to do is I don't want these to be white. It's just a bit dull. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go in and modify my appearances. So you can modify your appearance separately to your physical material. And in the case of ABS, you get ABS in lots of different colors. So we're going to go in and choose appearance. You can also press A on your keyboard. That will bring up this appearance menu. And the appearance menu has lots of different options. As you can see. Normally you start with this long list of 360 appearances. You can also favorite them. But we're going to apply a paint. And you can apply lots of different paints. There's the glossy paint, which is the classic. You can drag these on and just test them to see what they look like. In my case, I quite like these metal flake paints that Fusion has. But you might notice that they're greyed out. I can't drag them. There's a little error. Now this is because these are on the cloud and they need to be downloaded to your Fusion. So automatically Fusion doesn't download these all. You'll see this little download button on the right hand side. So I can go in, I quite like this red one, so I'm going to go in and edit it and download the red. Okay. You'll see it whirs for a minute and then it becomes white again. I can now use this and drag it onto my part. And it now has this really nice metal plate. I'm going to do the same with the block, I think. Make that a nice metal plate black. And let me make these. Let's see. I'm going to use the normal white for these. But yeah, we can always go in and change these a bit later. For you, choose whatever you think looks good. There are loads of really cool options here, from metals and liquids and all sorts. Whilst this is going to be plastic, if we made it, in this case, you can do whatever you want, make it look cool. So go ahead and have a go at using the different appearances. You'll notice they all come up here at the top. The other feature I do want you to be aware of is this at the very top, which is apply to. And what this changes is you can change from applying to a single body, for example the entire of our leg block, and instead apply something to a single face. So I could apply a metal of aluminium, for example, to just this front face, and the rest would stay the same. I don't want that, I like my red, so I'm going to undo. But you can apply to just faces if you want to, something to be aware of. The next thing I'm going to do is, now that I know my joints work, I'm actually going to unground our servo block. Now the reason for this is because I know that in our main assembly it will be fixed, so there's no point in having it grounded here because it could cause problems later down the line. So by ungrounding it now, you can make sure that it's all free to move when we import it into our next assembly. The next thing we're going to do is we're going to add a little foot onto the end of our part here. So we're going to activate the leg block, so I'm working on that. And I'm going to create a sketch using the same mid-plane that I used before. And you can find this within the servo block, because that's where we created it. It's under construction. I actually need to review it or unhide it. From here I can select it in the browser or on the main page, and you can see we're now creating a sketch on there. I'm going to look at it from the side, and I'm going to use a line. I'm just going to create some cool shapes. Be aware that we want it to lock onto this front surface, so if you press P, you can project as we've done before. I'm going to project this entire body. Click OK, and you have this project line on the side there. So you can use the line, and I'm just going to lock it on and just make a shape that you're happy with. I think that looks pretty cool. Again, do whatever shape you like, but we need to make some feet, make sure it's nice and far below the bottom of your leg block. It's now shaded in, so it's an enclosed area because of that line down the middle. So finish the sketch, we can select that, extrude, and again we're going to use the symmetric option make sure that it's symmetric. And you'll notice that it's the same color because it's joining. So as I said before, we're now using join because we're activated on the same body, it's recognized that it's touching, and we want it to be one part. So it's automatically joining, which is useful. I'm going to make this a little bit far. I'm going to make this 7.5 millimeters across. Click OK, and you'll see this is all still one body because we joined it. I'm going to add some fillets down to these just because we want a nice rounded edge on the bottom. So I'm going to go fillet, wool fillet, and just select that bottom edge. And we can just play around with that until you're happy with it. There's a nice curved edge down there on the bottom. I'm also going to add some fillets, just some normal fillets to these edges, just to give it a cool shape. But again, choose whatever fillet size you want. Add the fillets that you want. I would recommend adding maybe one in down here at the bottom. But actually, instead of a fillet, what I'm going to do is I'm going to add a chamfer. Now, a chamfer is slightly different to a fillet in that it's not curved, it's just flat. You can find this within Modify, Chamfer. I'm going to select that bottom edge and just drag it down. Now you see if I come too far, as I said before, Fusion throws up that error we were talking about where the error comes up because it can't do a chamfer between something that's not there. I'm just going to drag it back until it's happy. Okay. And you can see if I go any further than that, we're going past our fillet, so that's why it would be unhappy. I'm just going to add that in, add a little bit more structural integrity, and then even from here I could go in and add a fillet to that inside there. It's really up to you how you want to do it, just come up with a shape that you're happy with. Once we've done this, we're going to take our entire parts and we're going to put it into our main assembly. So first of all, what we need to do is activate the entire part so that we can see everything. I'm just going to do a double check. I think everything is looking quite good. We're going to save it. And I'm just going to say put added. And by saving it, we're making sure that it is always up to date, so that when we bring it into our next file, this is the most up-to-date version. What we're going to do is we're going to go into our hexapod assembly file, which is our main assembly file, and we're going to open our data panel. If you're not already, open up the hexapod project, and you'll see your two files are already there. We can see all the versions, and what we want to do is to bring this into our design. We can right click and say insert into current design. Fusion will then bring it in and you'll see it appear as a new component. And we're going to add joints to this, so we don't need to move it right now. Click OK and you'll see that that part is inserted. Now you'll notice that to the left of our part is a little link. Now what this means is that our part is directly linked to the subassembly that we created here. Therefore, if we change something, for example, if I change the color, I've already got it open, I could modify appearance, and I could say that actually I would like these legs to be a dark grey. And I could modify that, close, and then when I save, you'll see it updates here, and if we go back into our hexapod assembly, a little warning will come up saying one component is out of date. You've got one here, one here, one here. Can't miss it. All you have to do to update your file is click on that, and Fusion will automatically update it, and you'll see that the color has now changed. This is the direct link between your two files, and it allows you to go in and edit parts as you want to. You will notice, however, that you can't just go in and edit a part here. If I went into Modify and Appearance on this file, I can't just drag something in and it won't work. I can bring it in and I can drag it on. You'll see that nothing is changing. Now the reason for this is that it's linked. It is directly linked to the previous part, which means we can't just change it here. Something I want to make you aware of is a way you can do this from within your part, because it can become a pain having to reopen all your parts and going in and changing them and saving them and updating. I'm going to close that now completely because I don't need to use that anymore. what we can do is we can go into our leg subassembly, and instead of activating it, you'll see that there's an edit in place option. It's a little pen, and what this does is it allows you to edit that specific component within the current one that we have within our assembly. You'll see the blue box appears around your part, and it shows you that your leg subassembly is the one that's being edited. From here, we can go in and make changes as we want to. You can extrude, you can modify, you can do anything that you want to. And this will allow you to completely edit your part from within the assembly that it's in. Once you're done, you click on the little tick to finish edit in place, and you'll go back to the main assembly. And that is how you edit a linked part within an assembly. A really, really useful tool. Just wanted to make sure you were aware of it and how you can do it. What we need to do is add our joints in to make sure that all our parts are on here. But first of all, you might notice that actually none of these are connected. We can drag and drop them, and we don't want to do that, so we need to add in some joints. We've done this already, so add in joint, and it's actually, this can be an as-built joint because it's already in the right place. And we want these to be fixed, rigid. So I've selected rigid, and I can say that these two have an as-built joint, and we can create another one for bottom two. Now everything is jointed together. We're going to go in and ground this bottom part, bottom base plate, just so that it's not moving anywhere, and you'll see that nothing will move. From here we can add in joints for our next part. So I'm going to add in a joint on the bottom faces, add a joint, we're going to make it a revolute joint, select that bottom circle, and we're going to select the bottom circle here, and you'll see that it can revolve around. Now once it stops animating, you can see that you can actually rotate it, and this will define your component's standard place that it's set. So actually we're just going to rotate this around until that it's looking roughly straight on with our part. So negative 30 degrees in this case. Click OK, and you can see that revolute joint has been applied, and we can move our leg around. We're going to undo that just so it stays flat. Now you'll notice we must have made a mistake here, because this gap here, if we inspect it, is 50 millimeters. And yet our point is jutting out, which means it must be too big. If I inspect this, yes, it looks like it's 60 millimeters. We've clearly made a mistake there, so what we're going to do is go back and edit that. So as I just said, we can use edit in place, use the little pen. Now that we're in our component, we can go in and edit it. And it's our servo block that's incorrect, so we're going to go in and activate our servo block. Now the issue is actually with our sketching here. I think we added a 60mm height for our sketch rather than 50. But instead of changing that, I'm actually going to show you the modify tool called press pull. Now what this allows you to do is use the press pull feature up in modify, so Q, and you can select this top surface, and it will modify that surface by moving it. And what it'll do is it'll take the fillets and all the adjustments, and it will modify those as well. So we want this to be 10 millimeters less. We can say negative 10. You can see that it now fits within our part perfectly, but that all of our fillets and all of our changes, including our hole and everything, have been moved as well. So it's a really useful tool in that case. Click OK. End edit in place, and you can see that our part now fits perfectly in between the two parts. Looking good. Finally, I want to show you a way that you can add in fixes. So obviously there are lots of ways that we want to be able to increase how realistic our part is. And one of the ways that you can do that is by inserting bolts and nuts and all that. And rather than having to model them every time, so that'll be really annoying, instead you can do what's called a McMaster car part. If you're going to insert, you can say insert a McMaster car part or component. Now this will bring up this menu, and it has a whole catalogue of different parts that you can insert. Now before we do this, I'm going to inspect, and we're actually going to add in a bolt for this hole here. So I'm going to inspect that I want it from this top surface down to the bottom surface. It's a 60mm gap. We want a little bit more than that just for the bolt to be able to, for the nut to be able to go on. I'd say we want a maybe 65 or 70mm bolt. So we go Insert, McMaster Car, and from here we can select Screws and Bolts. We can choose the type of bolt that we'd like. Let's go with a rounded head screw. And there's lots of different ways that you can filter on the left. I'm in the UK, so I use the metric system, so I'm going to choose metric. And I want it to be a 5mm hole, which in the metric system is M5. And I'm going to choose a hex drive head. And we can just go through and look at all the different options with the screw threads, the pitches. In this case, it doesn't matter too much, but the length is one of the important parts. The length is the left-hand part here, and we wanted our part to be 65 or 70mm. So I'm going to select the 65. From here, you can click on Product Detail. It'll take you onto the product detail of that part. If you scroll down all the way to here, you can choose the type of file you want to import. Now, normally for Fusion we use a 3D step file, but a lot of these will work. Click Download. That part will be inserted into your main assembly once Fusion works. There we go. So you can see our part's been inserted. You can move it around. Now I typically like to go in and rename these because it comes up with a weird number and it's very difficult to distinguish them if you have lots of fixings in the part. So I'm going to call this an M5 65mm bolt. Doesn't have to be specific, just something that you know is what it's going to be. From here, we can apply a joint, capture position, and I'm just going to apply a joint between this bottom surface. Again, I can press Control to select that center part, and I'm going to put it on the top surface here. Technically, it's a revolute joint because the bolt can rotate, and you can see now that we have our bolts going through our part. We have a bit of thread at the bottom to be able to add a nut, and you could go in, insert, master car, nuts, go through. I'm not going to go through all these now. That is something you can do in your own time if you feel that you want to. But you can add nuts, you can add washers, you can add almost any part in the McMaster car. It's a very, very useful tool to know about. If you'd like, go through and add all the fixings that you want. But the next part is to add all of our legs as well. So from here, again, I'm not going to do it, but you insert another part and just repeat the process until you have all 6 of your legs fixed into that one. I'm going to end the video here, but I'd like you to go away, add all of those parts. If you'd like to, add all the bolts and the nuts, etc. And then we have our completed part.